It's been a while since I've made a video, but here, I'm back. So we are going to talk about classroom management. So we're going to do a quick series on classroom management to get us ready for the upcoming 2023-2024 school year. I don't know about you, but 2022-2023 was a wild ride. Hence the lack of content on this channel, because it was a lot. There was a lot going on. Without further ado, let's get into the video that I have planned for you. So this is going to be a little bit longer one, because classroom management is one of those things that gets tossed back and forth in the education community about, and it gets easily tossed aside as just build relationships with the kids and you're going to be golden. Now, while building relationships with kids is effective and it is a valid way to manage your classroom, it's not the only way. So classroom management plays such a crucial role in a productive classroom environment. So if we are not thinking purposefully at our approach to classroom management, it is not going to work. No matter what strategy you try, if you haven't planned it out and thought about it, even down to the setup of your classroom and how you're going to have kids sit, it's not going to be effective. So this video and the following in the series are going to explore practical strategies for you to use, tips and techniques that will help you be able to manage your classroom within your four walls. Sometimes it's easy to want to reach out to their classroom teachers or reach out to parents or admin. And although those things are effective to manage masses of children like we do, over 500 kids, you have to have something that works within your four walls and is effective instantly. So I want to give you some tips that are going to help you be instantly successful. So this series is going to focus on what's called a bottom-up design. So how can you incorporate classroom management into doing the activity? So let's say you're doing a drumming lesson. How can you, while you are drumming, talk to kids about instrument care, or how we're going to get our instruments and put our instruments back, how to properly play, proper technique, those kinds of things, how to do teamwork, collaborative, those things, which I haven't put the drumming to the side. I'm still drumming. I'm still doing the thing. I'm still doing a rhythmic lesson, or I'm still doing a melodic content, or whatever it is that I'm wanting to do. But I am, in addition to that, managing my classroom. So I don't do classroom management as like a separate thing. It really shouldn't be. It should be something that is fluid and within built into your content. If you keep it separate, the kids don't associate this strategy, this management strategy, with this task, if that makes sense. So we're going to spend some time talking about how we as teachers can purposefully plan our lessons to include classroom management. So if I do this and I keep the lesson flowing and I'm saving my energy and my time, the kids respond better and I respond better. I'm not going to come home and die at the end of the day. So I'm able to save my energy for more important things like building relationships with kids. So serious behavior concerns, you're going to find them to become a lot more minimal if you're keeping kids busy. So kids entertain themselves. So if they're bored, they're going to act up. So we want to be able to get them right into doing something, right into making music, right into creating, right into singing, whatever it is, and get them automatically too busy to act up. So those really serious behaviors like elopement or throwing things or pushing things, we are going to address that, I promise. But the more serious behaviors will be a lot more manageable if you've reserved your strength and your energy by getting rid of the annoying behaviors and the little classroom disruptions. And that's going to save you time and energy and effort. So that way, when you do need to deal with those serious behaviors, they don't feel as magnified. So this part of the video, we're going to call it creating a positive learning environment in the elementary music classroom. So what this boils down to is the topic of climate and culture. So if you're not familiar with those terminologies in education, basically establishing a culture and a climate within your four walls is going to help you be the owner of that time with your kids. You will not be relying on the classroom management of their teachers as much. So we see a variety of teaching styles as specialists. So we have to be able to give the kids the chance to learn our way and let the kids know that it's okay to be different when they're with us. It just establishes a rapport with them, and it lets them know that for the next 6 years, this is how it's going to roll in your classroom, right? So they will adapt. Kids are very resilient and they are very adaptive to routine. So the more routine that you can give the kids, the better you're going to be. So classroom climate is the psychological things that a teacher's behaviors and actions can do to help benefit their students. So for example, we want to provide a diverse, fair, equitable, and trustworthy student environment. So creating and following the most current pedagogical practices is going to be helpful to kids because it's relevant to 2023 children. Following our safety protocols. Safety is a big deal. It should have always been a big deal, but we're living in 2023 and we know what I'm talking about, right? Okay. So following the safety precautions and following through with those expectations will improve your classroom climate. We are constantly told that building relationships is the key to classroom management, but it's really challenging to create a relationship with 500 individuals. So we are going to build relationships within a lesson by focusing on student strengths, by supporting students in and out of the classroom. So for example, let's say that they're really into track, right? Share that kid with the PE teacher. So you're kind of putting into that kid's little emotional bank of like, hey, I'm letting you run track. I acknowledge that you are very athletic, so that later on when you need something from them in your classroom, they're more likely to give back, right? So it's that sharing, okay? You're honoring their time and their likes, right? And they're going to give back. They'll remember that. And form relationships with kids' parents, especially the kids that are giving you the most trouble. So I know what you're thinking. You're going to tell me, but the parents don't respond. You know what? That's not really the point. The point is you're showing the kid that you are willing to continue to try, right? So all you can do is try. Whether you get the parent on the phone or not, you're not 100% responsible for that. But you're going to tell that student, hey, look, I tried calling your mom. I tried calling your grown-up, however, whatever language you're comfortable with, right? I tried calling your grown-up and they didn't answer the phone, but I tried. I showed up for you, right? And this isn't to put you against mom and dad. This is just to reinforce to the student that you're going to continue to show up for them because their behavior in your classroom, in your four walls matters. Lastly, I want you to think about spending time within a lesson to focus on student social emotional growth. Now, I know there's some states out there that this is not a thing that you're allowed to do anymore, but I promise this is something that you've been doing in music class since social emotional learning was the buzzword, okay? So you don't need to stop and have a specific separate lesson, okay, to address kids' social and emotional needs. So when you're playing games, that is the number one time that you can talk about cooperation, understanding someone else's perspective, how to win, how to lose, how to speak with a positive manner, all of those things. You can do that just in playing a game, and you reach them on a social emotional level without actually calling it social emotional learning, if you get what I'm saying. So when you do that and you give that investment to kids, you have given them instant buy-in. So by celebrating kids' successes and reminding them that your space is a safe space, you've given that kid a connection to you. And it didn't take you any time at all. Nothing outside of your lesson. Okay. So let's talk about classroom culture. So classroom culture is the values and norms of how the students and teachers will work together, and their shared beliefs, their shared values and assumptions. So students want to know how you are going to make them feel connected to your class and to your content. So to do this, you want to focus on student strengths, praise their efforts, and connect with them outside the music room via your clubs like choir or percussion ensemble or ukulele club or something like that. Okay. Provide students with high, consistent expectations. Increase support in areas that they're struggling with, um, both musically and otherwise. So if you know that a kid is struggling to make friends, then maybe that's something that you work on with that student, giving them language that is friendly, giving them language that encourages relationship building. So that way you are working with them on something that's not necessarily musical, but you are giving them that power to have their needs valued and validated. Um, when you show respect to children by providing them with engaging lessons that are clear and organized, your kids are going to not only be physically safe, feel physically safe in your room, but they're also going to be psychologically safe. Everything is routine, everything is the same. You are a broken record, and kids thrive on that. Have students help you create classroom rules. I know that's hard when you have got 24 plus classes, but let them pick something that's special to their class. Maybe it's just one or two things. Write it down, put it in a binder, put it in your lesson plan, whatever it is, so that you can refer back to it if you need to. That gives them buy-in. They know that they are not being told what the rules are. They're helping to create that safe environment. So you also want to create a space where they can turn problems into teachable moments. So place a positive spin on something that's happening. You want problem solving to be something that they go to in their life. We don't want to enable children. We want to make them feel empowered and able to solve their own problems. So give them language, problem solving language, so that they can use that within sharing instruments or sharing materials in a center, or sharing sound, right? So when they're singing and you're doing ensemble skills, you're teaching them to share, you're teaching them to share sound, right? So you want to always give them that safe environment in which to do that. Classroom decor is a huge part of culture. Please do not put anything on the walls that you're not going to use to teach with. I think we get carried away with the cutesy Pinterest classroom. And although that's cute and adorable, first of all, it's real expensive and it's coming out of your pocket. And second of all, the kids who have sensory needs are getting a whole lot of sensory input from their environment, and it's cluttering their mind, and they may not feel as safe in your classroom because your classroom is overstimulating. So put it up, maybe find things that you can interchange a lot, use command strips to take stuff down, right? I also group my decor, so all the melody stuff is together, all the rhythm stuff is together, all of the musical element stuff is together. And I do that just to try to keep the environmental stimuli at a lower disruptive level. If you need to, have individual conversations with students about what their needs are. If you notice that Johnny keeps falling asleep in your class, talk to Johnny and find out why he's sleeping. Putting that extra time into a kid is going to go a long way, because not only are you going to find out that maybe Johnny is homeless, or maybe Johnny's mom just had a new baby, and that's why Johnny's not sleeping. First of all, Johnny's now a big brother, and second of all, Johnny's not sleeping because there's a crying baby. That's going to affect Johnny's behavior, right? So you need to know those things. You can also meet with that kid right before school, after school, go to their classroom, see how they're doing, see how they're feeling that day. That goes a long way, and it takes 5 minutes out of your schedule, but it is going to save you so much time within your lesson. Another way that you can provide a classroom that's rich in culture is to provide classroom jobs for kids. Now, I only have one job in my classroom, and that's the job of the maestro. The maestro literally becomes my right-hand man. I ask them to help me with everything. They help me pass things out. They help me monitor instruments, kids going to instruments. So I give them quite a bit of teacher control. The kids love it, starting in kindergarten all the way to 5th grade. I pick a maestro. I keep track of it on my seating chart, so I make sure that everybody tries to get a chance. But I do talk to them about maestro being a job, and you can get hired and fired from a job in the real world. So we do talk to them a little bit about the importance of maintaining their behavior at that time, so that way they don't get fired from their job. Okay, this next part is kind of a doozy, and I promise I will talk fast because I don't want this video to get super, super long, but this is very, very important. So I'm going to title this next part, The Power of Routine. So I've already mentioned this previously in the video, but routines are everything to elementary kids. Routines are everything to adults, let's be real. So when you set up kids to have structure and routine in your classroom, you are instantly setting them up for success. So let's take a look at some ways that we can set students up for success with our routines. So when we establish routines for the elementary music classroom, I want you to consider clear and consistent procedures. So you're going to communicate with your kids your expectations, but you cannot sway or change from those expectations. So when you give an expectation to a student, make sure that it is an expectation that you know you can easily accommodate for kids that have an IEP, because you don't want it to appear to other kids that so-and-so is not getting, that's getting more reminders, right? So we are going to have a conversation with kids about fairness and equality, but so instead of saying, you know, you're going to do it the first time, whatever it is, if I'm going to ask you to do something, you're going to do the first time. No, you're going to do something like, okay, I'm going to count back from 5. 5, you're going to put your instruments away quickly and quietly. 4, we're walking to the shelf. 3, blah, blah, blah. So you're still giving them a routine. You're giving them that, but you're also giving the kids who needs more scaffolding and more support in their IEP, you're giving them that at the same time. So I hope that kind of makes sense. So you are also going to be consistent, which is critical. So the minute you sway from your routine, the kids will catch on to it, and then you've confused them, and then they don't trust you. So consistency equals trust when it comes to children. So I want you to think about breaking down your routine to the smallest steps. And I can do a separate video on this because I'm just going to very quickly go through things. But if you want a longer video, just let me know. So I want you to think about how the kids are going to come into your classroom and how are they going to sit. That from their seating chart, you're going to be able to build everything else. Do you want them to sit in rows? Do you want them to sit in assigned spots? Do you want them to sit in a circle? Are you going to consider their grade level when it comes to how they sit? These are things that you need to be thinking about. And how are you going to manage your classroom from there? So in my classroom, the kids sit in rows. It's what works for me. In the front of the rows, I use these poly spot arrows. It tells the kids what row they're in. I also use that for management. So, okay, red team, we're all going to do blah, blah, blah. Orange team, we're all going to do blah, blah, blah. So the kids know their row color and where they sit. I change seats about every 9 weeks. Their places are assigned. They know. I put it in my seating chart. My seating chart's electric. I use, digital. I use iDocio. The kids know. They just know. So they don't even try to sit out of their spots. I mean, some of them do, like stinkers, they do, but they're kids. Okay. So once you know how children will sit, you can basically determine everything else. So knowing how they're going to sit is going to determine how they walk into the room, right? So if they're going to sit in a circle, maybe you sing the Let's Make a Circle song and they follow you or whatever, right? So you've got to know, because from the very first day, you got to teach that routine. Okay, so once you know how your children are going to sit, you can determine the rest of the routine for entering your classroom. Are you going to greet them at the door? Are you going to do an entrance song or a chant? Are you going to have conversations with classroom teachers? So in my classroom, I greet them at the door and I have a conversation with their classroom teacher. I call this the exchange of power. The kids need to see the exchange of power. They need to know that classroom teacher is no longer going to be in charge. The music teacher is. I also use this time to figure out like where kids are. It's like a little mini role, like if they're in the nurse or in the office or they went home, okay, for the safety protocols, right? So in my school, there's certain safety protocols that we follow. I need to know where, like, literally where every little body is. So I have that conversation, which means that I don't do an entrance song. I'm not even with kindergarten. I don't miss it, honestly. It's fine. The kids come in. I let the kids talk when they walk in. What? You know why? They're going to do it anyway. They want to. They're children. Children are very, very social beings. We rob them of that when we don't let them talk at all. Shh, be quiet for 45 minutes. I let them talk when they come in. It's really not that big of a deal. And you know what? I let them talk to me too. How was your soccer game? Oh, great. I'm so glad. Oh, your sister's birthday was yesterday. Happy birthday, sister. Because you know what I'm doing? I'm building rapport. So that way, when I say, okay, we're going to start in 5, we're seated on our bottom in 4, we have our hands and our feet to ourselves in 3, we're going to begin class in 2. When I get to 1, we're going to start stating our learning objective. 1. Okay, today we're going to blah, 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 blah. They just know, and they just do. I didn't sing anything. I'm a bad music teacher. Anyway, when class is over, how are you going to transition out of your lesson? So I'm just going to give you an old lady tip. Do not end class with a game. Just don't do it. First of all, your classroom teachers are going to hate you because they're like, "Wah!" Right after you do a game. Second of all, if you end a game abruptly, the kids will rebel. So always end with enough time to either transition them back to their spots onto the carpet, ask a couple of review questions, and then line them up, or transition with enough time, or end with enough time to transition to like instruments or something different, right? So just be really careful about where you put games in your lesson plan structure. So in my classroom, we line up in accordance to whatever their teacher loves, and I tell them that however your teacher wants you to line up is how we're going to line up. You need to remember that. I don't remember that. And when your teacher picks up, they have an expectation, and if you're not in their expectation, that's a consequence in your classroom, not mine. And the kids learn that real fast. So the first couple of weeks of school, basically, I just have the teachers email me their line order, and it's never a big deal. So that way I can help kids get in line. It also helps me learn names. So the first couple of weeks or the first couple of times that they come in, I will call them by name to get them in the correct order. But it also helps with A, learning names, B, helps manage kindergarten. So that's a tip for you. Usually by like Wednesday or Thursday of the first week of school, the kids can kind of do it on their own. So usually it's just like the first 2 days that I'm having to do that. But I always have a copy of their line order until I figure out the teacher's routine, because like some teachers will like rotate the first person to the end and blah, blah, blah. I just write it down in my stuff and I just remember. I've also been at my campus a long time, so I know a lot of the teachers and their routines. So let's talk about how we're going to handle instruments. So handling instruments, you need to consider your classroom layout, and you need to consider where you've put your furniture. And when you put the instruments upon the shelves, you're going to consider the height of your students. So does your environment allow for kids to access instruments independently? So I don't give it specific independence until second grade. Kinder and first grade, I'm still standing at the shelf helping them, but I'm stating an expectation. Okay, when you're at the shelf, you take 2 sticks out of the box, we hold it quietly in our hands, and we go back to our spots, or whatever the expectation is. Sometimes the expectation is you're going to keep a steady beat back to your spot. Sometimes the expectation is you're going to explore your instrument back to your spot, but when you get to your spot, your instrument is silent. Whatever. I keep them guessing on that part. Mainly it's kind of how I'm feeling that day. So is that a routine? Yes, it is a routine because they know that I'm going to give them an expectation at the shelf. Does that make sense? You could do it the exact same way every single time, whatever works for you. Okay. Are you going to label this stuff on your shelf? Are you going to give them that level of independence? I do. My boxes have pictures, and the picture is also on the place where it goes on the shelf. So that way when kids go to the shelf, they match up the little picture of the egg shakers to the egg shaker on the shelf, and they put the box back. So that kind of helps the maestro so that they can know where to put things back. So I also on my shelf put the instruments that I mostly use with lower grades, lower because they're shorter, and then the instruments I mainly use with upper grades a little bit higher because they're taller generally. So how am I going to transition between activities? So there used to be this big movement to have musical transitions. I was musical transition trained when I first started. Like, you're going to chant an ostinato, or you're going to sing whatever. I used to do it. I did that probably up until like 3 or 4 years before the pandemic. So probably like 8 years into my teaching, 10 years into my teaching, something like that. And then I stopped because kids are different. I have to give very explicit instructions. So I have to tell them, tell your neighbor what your favorite color is as you walk back to your spot. I don't ever transition them quietly. It's not going to work. You are wasting energy by forcing your children to be quiet in a transition. Again, it's because I've established 5, we're going to stop our conversation. 4, we're going to be seated in our spot crisscross. 3, we're going to blah, 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 blah. 2, XYZ. 1, XYZ. And if they don't do the thing, there's a consequence. So when you give them clear, consistent expectations, you can let them be children. Wow. Okay. I want you to think about how you're going to put them on barred instruments if that's something that you choose to do, and if they are a separate location in your classroom. So transitioning within the spots in your classroom is also a big deal. So you need to think about, how do you want to do that? I pair up kids. I have 2 kids on every instrument, no matter how many instruments I have. I have a class set of ukuleles. I still pair them up. I have a class set of recorders, and they each play their own recorder, but they still get a buddy. Okay, so they are paired up because I need another pair of eyes. So if Johnny's struggling, Susie's going to tell me, he doesn't know the fingering for F sharp, right? And so I rely a lot on Susie, okay, because she's going to rat out Johnny, and Johnny doesn't know the fingering, so that I can go help Johnny, and, we'll deal with Susie later. So I want you to think down to the tiniest routine. How do you want them to get a tissue? How do you want them to ask to go to the restroom? How do you want them to ask to stretch their legs? I get a lot of that. I don't know. I don't know. These children, they built different. So I do allow kids to be kids and to be humans, because I want to be able to stand up if my leg's going to sleep. It's just not a thing. It only becomes a thing if you make it a thing. So don't make it a thing. Okay. So you need to think through all of your routines, and then you need to ask yourself, are they age appropriate? You're never going to get a 5-year-old to not want to know what their instrument sounds like. So when I give homogeneous instruments to 5-year-olds, so we all play egg shakers at the same time, right? So we go get our egg shaker, we hand it back. I'm over there at the shelf, and I'm going, ch, 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 ch. Okay, you're going to take your egg shakers, and you're going to match Mrs. Bird. And I'm still monitoring at the shelf. I'm keeping a beat. I'm making sure they're not arguing over what color egg shaker they get. You get what you get. You know they'll fit. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, good. Shake your eggs with Mrs. Bird. Because they want to know. Okay? There are some classes that cannot handle it. And there are some classes that we play the game of, how quiet. But I still turn it into a game. I am not going to tell a 5-year-old, you need to keep that instrument quiet, or I'm going to take it away from you. Don't take instruments away from children. We'll talk about that on another day. So when you are structuring your classroom, you need to think about how are they going to get to the shelf? How are they going to get the instrument? What are they going to do when they get back to their spot? All of those things, because you need to teach those routines from the very first time they ever do it. And then give it some time. And we're going to talk about giving routines time here in a little bit. Okay. Give the kids time to learn the routine. Okay. And in all of these routines that you're teaching, all of these management strategies, positive praise is the way to go. Kids don't like to be disciplined. Neither do adults. When your principal calls you out on your BS, you don't like it either. So think about how a 5-year-old feels. They've only been alive for 5 years. Let's be real, right? And they spent, 2 of those years just learning how to walk and eat and stuff. So go a little easy on them. They're 5, okay? I'm not saying let them get away with things. Oh, no. But I am saying praise the snot out of them when they do it correctly. Oh my goodness, Susie, I really love how you're matching Mrs. Bird. That's so great. Thank you so much, Susie. Oh my God. You would think she won the freaking NBA trophy or something because she can shake her eggs like Mrs. Bird. But now Susie is like, I make Mrs. Bird happy. So when I do what Mrs. Bird asks, she's happy. I like that. And she's going to try to make me happy for the next 6 years. So you want to get those kids to know that you are team kid. So you are their biggest fan. And it doesn't matter that you think you sound like a nut, right? As long as you are giving them authentic, positive praise, that kid's going to perform for you every single time. You don't want to give inauthentic, sarcastic praise. So that when you see that Jonathan's off in the corner, sitting on the eggs and pretending he's laying them like a chicken, don't give it any attention at all. Ignore it. I know it's hard, right? But yeah, I ignore things. But guess what? The kids don't. Jonathan's sitting on his eggs like a chicken. I'm like, oh, but you know what? I can't see that because I can only see how fantastic Isabel is sitting there matching Mrs. Bird. That's all I see. I see fantastic. That's all I look for. He wants to sit on his egg like a chicken. That's up to him. I was like, but chickens don't play instruments, right? So when it comes time to play, I ask Jonathan to take a turn out. I don't put the instruments away. I used to. I used to be if you play before I say I take your instrument away, I used to be that teacher. Nah. In the last couple of years, I've changed a lot because they just are not able to. And that's okay. They're new. They're kids, right? I don't do the same thing I did 5 years ago as an adult. So it's just, I'm a different adult now than I was 5 years ago. So I feel like kids are different now than they were 5 years ago. So I don't take instruments away from kids. I do take their turn away though. I do tell them, put your instrument down for 1 round. Oh, sorry. You don't get to play. Or I walk over to the kid and I'm like, oh, this instrument, you know what? I'm gonna put this instrument in timeout real quick because it's getting you in trouble. And so I just put it to the side. I usually use a timer. I turn the timer over. Okay, when the sand runs out, you can pick your instrument up and join us. That way I'm not having to monitor that because I will never remember. I have really bad ADHD. I use a little timer, like those game timers. I use those all the time. Kids lose a turn the timer over. They come back in when they come back in. Same when I sit a kid out. If they do something really, really bad, severe stuff, dangerous behaviors, they're spinning around and they're too dangerous and someone gets hurt, blah, blah, blah. Stuff I'm not going to send anybody to the office for because they have other jobs to be doing. I just will sit that kid out. And I turn another timer over. I have like 1 minute timers and 3 minute timers. I also have 15-minute timers, but that's a whole other different issue. I try not to use that one, but it's more for like a calming situation than a punishment. Anywho, so when you are structuring your lesson plan, and I'll put it right here. Okay. When you're structuring your lesson plan, I want you to think about your routines. And for the first couple of weeks, I want you to write that into your lesson plan until you get really good at it. I've been doing this for 17 years. I'm starting my 18th year this year. I consider myself to be really good at it, so I don't need to write it down anymore. But if I know that I'm going to change a routine for a class because it just wasn't working, then I will write it down. Now, let's talk about how do I know if a routine's not working? I've tried it for at least 6 weeks because it takes 21 days to make a habit. That's scientifically proven. I don't have 21 days, right? So what I try to do is in those 6 weeks, I try really hard to consistently go over that routine and that expectation. And I make it purposeful, like whatever it is, I hit it every time they come to music. And by the 6th week, I know if I'm asking too much of them or I need to restructure it for that particular class or whatever, and then I can change it. Do not change something after trying it once and it tanking. You didn't give it enough time. So kind of remember that it takes 21 days to build a habit. So aim for about 6 in music land, right? Okay. So with all of that, so you've planned everything down to a T and you've got it all down. It's planned. It's written in your little teacher planner. Guess what? Only like half of it's going to work. So you need to be flexible and you need to be adaptable. So what that means is, let's say you get 3 classes of 4th grade that have 18 students in it, and then you get a class of 4th grade that has 28 students in it. You cannot manage the class of 28 the same way you manage a class of 18. You just can't. The class of 28 is going to move a whole lot less than the classes of 18. So you're going to have to adjust your management strategy for that class of 28. So you've got to be flexible, and you just can't be concrete and be like, but I do it with Miss Gomez's class. They only have, and then now, Miss Cutie Pie's class feels like trash because they're not like Miss Gomez's class. Well, of course they're not like Miss Gomez's class. They got 10 more kids in there, right? They got 10 more kids and 20 of them have IEPs, right? So you just gotta, the teacher, have to adapt. You cannot make the children, you cannot expect children to do it. You're the adult in the room. You be flexible. You adapt. Now, I'm not saying just throw your management strategies to the wayside and be like, there's too many dang kids in here, I can't do it. Just change it. Change how you approach it, right? I would also make sure that when you are planning your lessons and you're planning your routines, that you keep in mind the kids' schedule. Are they coming from lunch? Are they coming from recess? Are they all that? Because if they're coming from a place where they have stuff with them, you need to have a place in your room for them to put their stuff. Figure out how you're going to do jackets and mittens and hats and coats and water bottles and all of those things. They need a procedure. Okay. And you need to make sure that you include that in your classroom management structure, routine stuff. Okay. I know this video got a little long. I am so sorry, but I had a lot to say. I have even more to say on this topic, but I'm going to stop the video here so it doesn't get super long. But if you want to hear more, if you will go to my website, www.mrsbirdsmusicroom.com, you can read my blog. And in my blog, I go even more in depth into classroom management and planning for your upcoming school year. So if you like this video, please actually like the video. It helps the channel. If you liked me and you like my content, please subscribe. I promise to have more content for you this school year because I'm being flexible and adaptable, and I have restructured how I'm going to do content this upcoming school year so as that I don't drown like I did last school year. So if you would hit subscribe, that would help out a ton. If you like me and you want more of me, you can check me out on all social medias, and I'm on Threads too. So if you hadn't thread yet, you should go thread. I am at Mrs. Bird's Music Room on all social medias. If you enjoyed this video, tell me in the comments. Hype me up a little bit. That'll make my day. I know you guys are going to do a bang up job this school year. I am so proud of all of us for hanging in there. This job is not easy. And I am right there with you. I promise my kids are not perfect. I promise I'm not perfect, but I'm going to continue to try. I'm going to show up for kids every day, and I'm going to do my absolute best to make some music and make connections with kids. So as always, please sing, say, dance, play, but above all else, care. I'll see you next time. Bye.